And that theory is called Stephen Krashen's monitor model. It's a total game changer. The big idea is that real fluency doesn't come from a textbook. It comes from subconscious absorption, kind of like how we all learn to speak as kids. It's all built on 5 core ideas that pretty much flip traditional language class on its head. So let's dive into the first one.
All right, first up, and this is the absolute cornerstone of the whole model, is this crucial difference between acquiring a language and learning one. Now, they sound like they're the same thing, but in Krashen's world, they are 2 totally different paths.
So what's the difference, really? Well, acquiring is that subconscious thing. It's intuitive. It's when you just pick up the language by watching movies, listening to music, just chatting. You're feeling it out. Learning, on the other hand, is the conscious stuff. That's the classroom, the grammar drills, the vocab lists you cram for a test, and then, poof, they're gone a week later.
And this captures it perfectly. Just think about some phrase you picked up from a friend or while traveling. It sticks with you, right? That's because it's tied to a real memory, some actual context. And that's way more powerful than some random sentence you had to memorize from chapter 3.
Okay, so if learning all those rules isn't really the main way we get fluent, what are they even for? That brings us to idea number 2, which is all about that little voice in your head that second-guesses everything you say. Let's call it your inner editor.
Krashen calls this editor the monitor. It's the part of your brain that's trying to use all those rules you consciously learned to polish up your speech before you say it, but, and this is a huge but, in the middle of a real fast-paced conversation, it's almost useless. By the time you've stopped to check if you use the right verb tense, the conversation has already moved on. Yeah, for this inner editor to even work, you need 3 things all at once. You need enough time, you have to be totally focused on being grammatically correct, not on what you're actually trying to say, and of course, you have to know the rule perfectly. In a normal chat, that almost never happens. That's why your acquired language, that gut feeling, has to take over, even if it's not perfect.
So, if our inner grammar cop is sitting on the sidelines most of the time, what's actually guiding us? Well, this third idea is fascinating. It suggests our brains have their own built-in syllabus. And honestly, it couldn't care less about the order of your textbook chapters.
This is called the natural order hypothesis. And what's wild is that research shows that pretty much everyone, no matter what their first language is, tends to pick up grammar in a very predictable order. For example, most people get the hang of ing endings way before they master adding the s for things like she plays, even if the textbook taught that s rule on page 1. Your brain just has its own lesson plan.
Okay, so our brains are on this natural path to acquiring language. But what's the fuel for this journey? The fourth idea has this beautifully simple answer, and I love calling it the Goldilocks input. You know, not too hard, not too easy, but just right.
And this is it. This little formula. This is the engine of language acquisition. The I stands for your current level, all the stuff you already know. And the +1, that's the new stuff, the information that's just a little bit beyond what you already understand.
So the whole key is finding what Krashen calls comprehensible input. A perfect example is watching a TV show with subtitles on. The I is the story you can follow, the visuals, the stuff you get. The +1 is the new vocabulary you just kind of absorb from the context, almost without even trying. It's just challenging enough to be interesting, but not so difficult that you just get frustrated and turn it off.
And that brings us to the 5th and final idea, and honestly, this one might be the most important one of all, because it's about the emotional side of things. Krashen calls it the affective filter, but a much easier way to think of it is as an anxiety wall.
It's pretty simple. When you're relaxed and confident, your anxiety is low and your brain is like a sponge, just soaking up all that new language. But the moment you get stressed or anxious, that wall goes up. And it doesn't matter how perfect the language input is, very little of it is actually going to get through that wall.
You know that feeling when a teacher calls on you in class and your mind just goes completely blank? That's the wall. That is the affective filter in action. The stress and the fear of making a mistake literally create a mental block that stops language from getting in.